All right, and we are live. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Endless Report. My name is Tony, your host as always. Here we got a lot of gaming news to cover as always here on the show. Not too long of a show today. We're probably going to be a little shorter than usual. It's been we had the holiday weekend last week, so we were off. Been a little bit of a slow news week that week. Similar this week, we had a few news stories which are definitely interesting, as you saw in the title as well with the Witcher announcements, a few new announcements for some new games coming even in December. So definitely some exciting stuff to talk about. But I think at the end of the show, you're going to want to stick around because we have the Game Awards next week. That's actually a week from now on Thursday night. So next Friday, next Endless Report, we're going to have a lot of game announcements and awards, hopefully a lot to cover there. So definitely a lot to get excited for in the upcoming week of gaming. So we're going to go through all that went out this week. We're going to go through all those announcements from the past 2 weeks of news, and then we're going to get into our predictions for the Game Awards next week. That's kind of the way I'm going to round up the show today. So we're going to be a little quick, though, like I said, probably around half hour to 40-minute mark, a little less than an hour today, because we don't have too many stories in the docket. So I'll pull that docket up, and you all can see what I'm talking about here. Thanks for hopping in the chat, guys. Happy to have you here. As you can see, I'm just going to start off on the releases this week. As you see on screen, we have the Callisto protocol. And usually I don't go too in-depth on the releases this week. I go over it, kind of over the critical impressions. But I did want to cover this really briefly because we did talk I really extensively about this game on the show. So I'm just going to play this gameplay in the background. No spoilers here. This is the first, I believe, 20 minutes of the game. This is the first minute or so we're showing. So if you don't want to know anything about it, maybe look away from the screen, put it in another tab. But this is just the beginning of the Callisto protocol. Has gotten a lot of mixed reviews. So I wanted to talk about this very briefly. So we got a lot of very positive reviews on this game's graphics, its performance, its sound design, a lot just technically across the board. I've been seeing a lot of impressive reactions. That being said, narratively, I think a lot of people were looking for something different. I think those who are fans of the Dead Space franchise, which I must admit, as I said in the past, I have not played the original Dead Space games, so I don't have a coin in the argument here. I'm not sure which way I would lean in terms of my preference in terms of survival horror games. Excuse me, but a lot of people are saying this isn't as much of a survival horror in terms of gameplay as it is atmosphere. A lot of people are saying it's very action oriented. Some people had some complaints with the way the gameplay evolves in this game, and I won't get into too much detail because I want to, if you want to go read those reviews, you can. I don't want to spoil too much, if you want to save that for yourself. But I do think this was an interesting game to cover. I think if you're interested in this game at all, definitely check out what's going on. And I wouldn't just base your opinion just off of reviews. A review is a review, just like my opinion is going to be mine, and I may have different preferences than everyone else. So definitely recommend checking this game out for yourself. If you're interested in that horror kind of aesthetic, not really my thing always. I tend to say I'm not the biggest horror fan, so I take my opinion with a grain of salt there. But I got a lot of mixed reviews, some like 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10s, and some like 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. So it was like a very divisive game. I think that's why it was interesting just to mention that. That being said, I just keeping this gameplay in the background, nothing too crazy. But we also had Marvel's Midnight Suns, which I don't have on the screen, but we showed quite a bit on the show as well, and I wanted to mention that's also releasing. A lot of turn-based gameplay there. That game has got some really positive reviews. Looks really cool. Again, I'm not the biggest turn-based player. I have played a little bit of things like XCOM in the past, but again, not super. I'm a bit of a novice when it comes to those turn-based combat games and strategy games. So that looks very interesting though. And if you're a Marvel fan like I am, I definitely think it's pretty cool to see all your favorite superheroes in that. So I might have to give it a shot, even though I'm not the biggest player of that style of game, just because I like the atmosphere of it. The art style seems cool. So I think it's something I definitely want to check out as well. That being said, that's about it for releases this week. There are some smaller things, some stuff coming out in the coming months, in the coming weeks. So we are going to talk about that in the rest of this show here. And as I say that, I am going to start transitioning over to our first of these announcements that we got. And that is, as you could see, you did see on the docket a moment ago, that Splinter Cell remake. So bear with me here as I drag that marker down and we pull that up on the docket. All right, so I got my marker here on Splinter Cell Anniversary, and I'm just scrolling through this. I'm going to actually play this video they had straight from Ubisoft. It's like a 20-minute video. I'm not going to play the whole thing, of course, or go over everything, but I do think it's just helpful to have this in the background as well. But that being said, we got a lot and a little here. Again, I have not went through this entire 20-minute video. I will admit, I did read a lot of the details and a lot of the summaries based on what was covered here, but I have not had a chance to go through and watch this entire documentary. And for some reason, they don't want me to full screen it. I'm going to see if I can do this. Nope. Either way, I'll let that play in the background. Maybe we can get some interesting footage here. I know they did show some screenshots. So I want to see if we can find that as well as I speak. But we did get a lot of discussion about the history of the Tom Clancy Splinter Cell franchise. You can see some old Splinter Cell footage here from the original games. That being said, there was some controversy. I shouldn't say controversy, but some confusion, some worries over this game in the past few months. I guess I could use that word. I believe some people were let go. I believe there were some changes in management or some changes in the way this game was being developed. The last time we did cover this game on the show, there were talks about changing the storylines to make it for a more modern audience. I believe there's some political storylines within the Splinter Cell franchise. Again, showing my blind spot here, I did not play the original Splinter Cell, the first Splinter Cell, so I can't comment exactly on that storyline. That being said, I do think that we're seeing a lot of positivity here in this video. I heard a lot of positive reception to this video, and it seems like they're on the right track to honor the history of the Splinter Cell franchise in the way that the fans of the gameplay are really going to enjoy. I'm sure this kind of gameplay. I think one of the again, I'm all over the place on Splinter Cell because I don't have much of that knowledge. I'm going off of all my little references to it here. But one of the first videos I've seen of that original Splinter Cell game was being able to like shoot a hole into the fish tank and see the water flow out. And that was such a big deal for the technology at the time. I believe that was on the PS2 that you can even do that. That was a feature of Metal Gear as well at some point, I believe. I made a mistake in there. But I think it's really cool to see those kind of like stealth action gameplay type games come back. Again, I speaking on the Callisto Protocol earlier, I'm not the biggest horror stealth player per se. I love The Last of Us, but I'm not a horror person. I don't really like zombies, so it's kind of ironic that I enjoyed things like The Last of Us or The Walking Dead or those types of IPs because I really enjoy the tension and the storytelling. That being said, the horror elements aren't my favorite, but I do like the idea of the stealth gameplay and making your way, with strategy rather than like loud, fast action gameplay. I do think that is, pretty cool. So I think Splinter Cell franchise is probably something that's right on my alley. Then again, will have to check that out. That being said, this video is buffering. I wish we could keep that gameplay going here, but we did get, like I said before, a lot and a little here. It was a lot of them just saying, we're working on making the Splinter Cell franchise stick to its roots. They got a few. I think we got a few concept art screenshots throughout here. I'm going to see if I can try to scrub through and pull. That being said, not too much news there. It was really just a discussion of what was going on after that last kind of negativity news where everyone said that the remake was on the back burner. So all that's over with. It's not really on the back burner anymore. We had the team discussing here about what, how important this franchise is to Ubisoft and kind of reestablishing that, I think, with the fans of the Splinter Cell franchise, especially after all of the uncertainty of the past year or a few months or so. So overall, if you're a Splinter Cell fan, seems like a positive thing. I think, take it with a grain of salt. There's not much new information to take in here. It's a lot of like, you got to wait and see. So I think we'll have to wait and see, what the new game looks like when we see more footage, more discussions about it. That being said, right now, it's kind of just reestablishing that Splinter Cell is back and it's going to be coming back in full force. So that's hopefully a really cool news for all the fans of the Splinter Cell franchise. That being said, I do want to move on to our next, basically remake announcement, more so remaster, I guess you could say. And we'll move over here. And that is The Witcher 3 remake. So The Witcher was announced to be coming to next gen a while back, actually. And this was something that we had delays on. We thought 2021, I believe, at first, then 2022. We weren't sure if it was still going to come out this year for a while because of that. There was, I think it was supposed to come this summer. There was another delay this summer. So it's kind of been, being pushed back a bit. That being said, we finally got some more information here on The Witcher 3 next gen update. They're calling it the next gen version. So I do want to pull up this article here. Some more coverage of the Callisto Protocol came out today. So, of course, you're seeing that a lot on the gaming websites there. We'll get rid of that. But as we were saying before here, similarly to that other live stream, that other video that Splinter Cell did, the Witcher team had a live stream on Twitch and basically just sat down with the development team, talk through a lot of what this update brings. They did emphasize a lot that this is not, this is a free update, 100% free. And this isn't a ton of new content, so don't get like your hopes up for a whole new expansion, DLC, anything like that for The Witcher. They made that very clear throughout the video, of course. This is something you'd probably expect from a lot of other remasters, maybe a little bit more here. I would probably put this akin to, again, a game I haven't finished yet, but I have played a bit of the Death Stranding Director's Cut, or even maybe the Ghost of Tsushima, but a little less there, because you're not getting a full-fledged DLC here, but you are getting some extra content. So it isn't just simply a remaster remake. You are getting a little bit extra here, and we're going to get into that right now. So as I said here, this was coming out in December. I mentioned that earlier. I wanted to reiterate that. December 14th. So I believe not next week, but the week following. So that's pretty exciting. It might be exactly about, I want to say 2 weeks from now, Wednesday, Thursday then? Yeah, Wednesday the 14th. So around a week and a half from now, you'll be able to get your hands on The Witcher 3 Remake, which is pretty exciting. I'm an owner of the original Witcher 3, so I don't have to pay any money for this. It's a completely free update. As you know, as far as I know, that's for every single owner of the Witcher 3. I don't think it matters if you're on, PC, console. Switch, I think might be over there. That's something we had to double check here. But I don't think Switch is included whatsoever. I don't think that it's included in the next gen console. Unfortunately, the Switch version of that game is a bit different. So I think that's something we may not expect. It's similarly with the Skyrim special editions. When we saw that new Skyrim Anniversary edition come out with that new content, Switch was not able to get that either. So we'll see what happens there. I believe that's actually still happening though on the back burner. That we'll get that eventually, but no Switch Witcher 3 port. Next gen port as we know for now. It's gonna be that default Witcher 3 port they have. That being said, for Xbox Series X, S, PS5, PC, everything there, you're getting, The Witcher 3 at 60 frames, maybe even more on PC unlocked. You're getting a lot of new updates that you'd expect from a lot of these remasters, like these new features like DLSS, ray tracing, a lot of just minor updates like with the new rendering technologies from AMD, being able to upscale. I think a lot of fidelity CAS here. Again, a lot of features off the top of my head, but I'm going to scroll down to the article and I can actually just read them to you and we'll summarize. But a lot of gameplay features as well. And I'm going to skip over that because we'll get into that in a moment. But this comes after, as you're seeing on this article, all these other announcements from the Witcher franchise. A lot going on there. But this is first things first here, coming in December before we get into all the Witcher sequels. That being said, again, I'm all over the place here. So we're going to start with those quality of life improvements. We did get a few things here. Most notably, I believe there were some cross-save features. So you can now save your game between PlayStation 5, Series, Xbox Series, and PC, which is really interesting for me specifically because I have this game on multiple platforms, I believe. I got it free for PS Plus on my PlayStation. I had this on PC and I played it quite a bit, I think, or whenever the game, around the game's release on my PC at the time that I had. So I'm thinking maybe I'll go and grab that save file, see if I can transfer it over to my PlayStation now and play the new next-gen version, if possible, because I don't really think I have the PC that could run that at the performance that I'd want to here. So maybe my PS5 could pick up that old save file. That'd be really, really cool. That being said, with the PS5 specifically, you get all those new DualSense controller features. You get the rumble, the haptics, you get the trigger, features of the adaptive triggers there. I believe there's some vibrations here they're saying with the way you cast magical signs, and when you're in the sword combat, there's specific sword vibrations made for the PlayStation specifically. So very cool, some very cool stuff there. They said there's changes to the map as well, some new like fast travel. I think some new filters on cleaning up the quest marks and stuff there. They're saying there was some pesky question marks because The Witcher 3 had a lot of these like potential quests all over the map. Did get a little overwhelming to me sometimes when I was trying to explore. I was like, oh, there's something over there, something over there. It can get a bit indecisive, especially if you're used to just kind of following your way, like in a Bethesda game or some other open world games, where they kind of just let you go off the beaten path. There's a lot going on in The Witcher, and I think that was one of the things that was difficult for me when I first played. I do want to say, after all those quality of life improvements I just mentioned, after those obvious performance improvements, I think I would want to reiterate why this is exciting to me as well, because I wasn't someone who beat The Witcher 3. I'm a huge RPG fan, a huge story, narrative game fan. So Witcher 3 is right up my alley. And I got fairly through it. I hate to say that I did give up at some point. I got through some of the, if you played the game, you may know the Bloody Baron storyline. I don't want to spoil anything here. I got through a bit of the first third of the game, definitely the first act or so. That being said, the things like the combat, there were some like here, these quality of life improvements, some things with the map, the exploration, just the way I was playing it on my PC at the time. It was a little overwhelming. There was a little too much going on. There were a lot of other games at the time, and for some reason, I couldn't stick with the combat. It wasn't very engaging for me, and I kind of fell off here. So I'm hoping that years pass. I'm a little bit older now. I've a little bit, stepped away from it. It's kind of gotten out of my mind and kind of, on a fresh path here. Maybe I can go back to that game, enjoy it, kind of grasp it for what it was, and really get into it the way everyone else did at the time and really enjoy it, because everyone said this is one of the, if not the best RPG, story of all time. Obviously, I'm a big fan of, things like Knights of the Old Republic or, Bethesda, Fallout and the Elder Scrolls series. I love these kinds of large open world, RPGs with these narrative branching storylines. And I know The Witcher, with your, set protagonist as Geralt, you have even more kind of like set choices and storylines that really affect things that you may not feel as strongly as some of those other games. So it's one of those things that's right up my alley. And I think I need to just kind of I was always thinking, just bite the bullet, get through that, that my difficulties with the gameplay and just play through it. And now I have a real reason to try that again, because I have a new system, new features, these quality of life improvements they said that everyone's looking for. So that's really, really a positive for me personally. That being said, I did want to mention some of the other content here about the Witcher TV show. They mentioned briefly, and I think we're gonna have to wait and see how the storyline plays out here, that there will be some Netflix TV show related content. So I'm guessing there will be probably a short quest line related to some of the storylines within the TV show and with Henry Cavill's Geralt. And then you'll also get the Henry Cavill version of the armor. I believe you're gonna get the Witcher TV show all black and silver kind of studded armor that he wears, which is not in the original game. It's very similar, of course, to the game's armor, based off the game and the book's armor, but you get that exact TV show version, which I think is pretty cool. That's something I love, like in the Spider-Man games, we get all the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield, all the movie suits within the video game. Of course, it's still another Spider-Man suit, something, but it's really cool to have that movie accurate stuff. So I think seeing that, that for Witcher fans, I'm sure that's really, really cool if you're a fan of the show. Of course, if you're a fan of the show, you kind of needed that right now, considering the show has had a lot of rough news in the past few months. Henry Cavill did just leave the show and is now being recast. There were a lot of unfortunate things said about the background of the production, that staff were not really passionate about the show. So again, if you're a Witcher fan, it wasn't the best news with the TV show recently, but hopefully, all this new video game news, the Witcher remake coming out, the Witcher 4, the new Witcher 3 remake here this December, you have a lot to look forward to. So that's about it for all my thoughts on the Witcher 3 remake there. I'll probably be playing that or trying that out in the next few weeks, but I have a lot of other games to get through. I'm still on that God of War Ragnarok kick. I really haven't been able to push through that game since we've talked about it in the last 2 weeks or so. So really want to get back into that game before I start a whole nother storyline, adventure that could take multiple hours like The Witcher. So lots in the backlog, but definitely excited to check that out. That being said, we got another movie trailer that we talked about a lot on the show. This is speaking of TV shows and movies like we do a lot. We're gonna get into that now. This is more on the Super Mario movie. So of course we covered that teaser trailer that came out. I think it was 3 episodes ago. That was our big story that week. But we got a huge new trailer this week, and I hate to, I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, but I do want to play this in the background because I think it was very, very cool. Again, if you're a fan of just Mario in general, gaming in general, even just want to have a good time at the movies for a good family fun movie, I think this movie looks super fun, super cool. We got some more announcements on voice actors, I believe. I know we have, of course, Chris Pratt as Mario. I'm forgetting. I believe we have. I don't want to mistake Donkey Kong here. We have Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong, which is very interesting. I'm just reading that now. We have Chris Pratt as Mario. We have Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach. Charlie Day as Luigi, which I'm pretty excited for. I think he's gonna make a really funny Luigi there. Jack Black as Bowser. Keegan-Michael Key as Toad. Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. I was gonna say Seth Rogen, but I didn't want to mistake it there. I think it's funny with Fred Armisen as well as Cranky Kong. Michael Richardson as Kamek, which is interesting. We haven't seen. Kevin Michael Richardson rather. I was thinking Michael Richards Kramer, but that's not Kevin Michael Richardson. So I almost got mistaken there. And Sebastian Maniscalco as Spike, which I think is very interesting. Another probably really funny voice there, comedian. But that all being said, I'm going to make this full screen now. You saw a bit of that there, just some cool footage, but I did want to wait till we saw the end of the trailer, which I thought was probably the most notable part of it, worth mentioning on the show. Just if you're a gaming fan in general, you'll recognize a lot of these classic Mario tropes. Of course, see the fishes there. You see, you're sure to see Toonami Mario, I believe, the Fire Mario. Again, I'm not the most well versed on some of these names here. You see all of those Yoshis there. But right at the end, it was the part that everybody got excited about. You see these rainbows and a lot of stuff going on. You think, what's happening? And then you get actually a Mario Kart sequence here. And I'm just going to fast forward it. Oh, I was about to fast forward it because I got a little too impatient. But here you go. You see Mario Kart and Rainbow Road. Obviously a classic. If you're even if you're not a video game player, you've Mario Kart. You've played on Rainbow Road. So looks like a really fun, just family movie for everyone to go. Family, friends, anyone to go and enjoy together. I think I'm definitely going to go and see it when it comes out. I'm not sure. I believe, April. There we go. So perfect moment there in the trailer for me to not remember when the release date was because we got it right there. But I just wanted to show that trailer quickly. Nothing much else to say there. Just wanted to play it out in the background. I thought it was pretty exciting. And I think we may not see much more else on Mario here in the coming months, but I don't need to see much more else than that. I'm already sold. Everybody's, wondering about how the voice performances are going to really play as it goes on, but I think I'm pretty confident. It sounds like it's going to be a really fun movie, so I'm not too worried about any much of that. I think it's going to be really fun. That being said, I want to move on here to another television slash movie production. This is another TV show here, and one that we have covered in the past. So I'm going to bring this one up real quick. And if I can grab that marker, there we go. All right. So this comes, as you can see here, the Fallout TV show, as I said. This comes from a larger interview, actually, with Bethesda Game Studios head Todd Howard, where he talked about not only the Fallout TV show and the Fallout franchise, a bit about Elder Scrolls, what's going on there. Starfield, of course, was the most anticipated game from them right now, coming next year. And even on the Indiana Jones game that they talked about that he's, producing on with Machine Games, the Wolfenstein franchise. So we got a lot of tidbits from Todd Howard in this interview, a lot of Bethesda news. So a lot to kind of pick at and ponder at. And I could probably spend another like half hour, an hour on the podcast, just like, predicting all of, what can happen with these games. But I'm going to try to keep it pretty concise here and make sure we stick to, all the new nuggets of information here and what's going on. So I actually have some notes here. I want to make sure I don't forget any of what I wrote down here. We did want to cover the Fallout TV show first, of course. It's kind of a multi-part here of that interview. And again, just as quotable here. Not much else to say on the Fallout TV show, but just as quotable I thought was really important. He said, when people wanted to make a movie, they wanted us to tell the story of Fallout 3 or to tell that story of Fallout 4. And it was just meh, he said. For us, it was, hey, let's do something that exists within the world of Fallout. So what Todd Howard's kind of getting at here is that they wanted to do something that's, again, I'll just keep this quote here, not a retelling of a game story, quote. It's basically an area of the map. Let's tell a story here that fits in the world we have built, doesn't break any of the rules, can reference things in the games, but isn't a retelling of the games, unquote. He continued, quote, it exists in the same world, but it's its own unique thing, so it adds to it. While also people who haven't played the games, who can't experience how crazy cool Fallout is, can still watch the series. And I guess, I could say probably experience it in that way. I'll finish this quote for him. That being said, I think it's a great quote. I think that's mostly what we'd expected, but after a few, some shots, some props, and some other things, we saw some vault pictures as well. People got worried that maybe the Fallout 3 story, as some people had said, we saw that the kind of like the kids' room and the baby crib from the start of Fallout 3, where you start in the video game. So people kind of had speculated there that maybe they'll play off that original game story. That being said, we have confirmation here from Todd Howard. There is no relation. Again, it's in the same universe, which is really cool. He even mentioned later in the interview, I think, that there may be some interactions, or not, maybe not characters. That'd be, maybe we'll have to see there. That'd be really cool. But maybe at least to start off, some mentions of other things going on. Of course, we'll get factions like maybe the New California Republic, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Enclave, things like that are like big, Fallout staples that you just come to know playing the games that are kind of all across the map. That being said, I think maybe we'll get some references to events of past games. I don't know, obviously the different, if you don't know Fallout, it's a nuked apocalyptic wasteland. So there's not a ton of communication across, but there are certain things that get, passed through different, like these communities that have survived. And I do think we can get some mentions of some of the in-game events, like, what happened in Washington and Boston, of the Fallout 3 or 4 games. Of course, we could hear some things about that. And I think that'd be really cool to tie in games and even potentially bring in, game characters. That'd be something that I really haven't done before in Fallout, across the games, but to have, there's some, some exceptions there. I shouldn't say that, but I do think that it could be really cool to just let it be its own thing. Again, Walton Goggins is leading the show. I think he's a really funny dramatic actor that I think has a really diverse acting chops there. He can be really goofy, really silly, and kind of a really like serious and stern way sometimes as well. And he's a really great dramatic actor. So I think that kind of fits with, Fallout's tone. There's a bit of that humor and that tongue-in-cheek kind of atmosphere to it. There's also this grim, dark reality and that kind of playing off of that dark humor of that as well. So I don't know exactly where we go with this game's story, but I think not relying too heavily on the game's vault stories is going to, I think, serve it better. That being said, obviously we saw all those set photos of inside the vault. So they're definitely going with a similar vault dweller startup. It looks like it seems, at least, like, every Fallout game starts off in a vault. So it seems it's the way they're sticking with, keep it, true to the nature of the franchise and not starting off with what like New Vegas, which is not a Bethesda game or Interplay game or any other classic Fallout developers, where you don't start off in a vault. It's probably one of the only games you don't. So wondering what we see here. This movie, TV show rather, for the third try there. This TV show does give a lot of West Coast vibes, people are saying. It's actually being filmed here in New York, near me, my hometown in Staten Island, my family's from. So I'm not sure how they're trying to do a West Coast vibe with Staten Island, but we'll see how they do there. I think it is, from what we've heard, it seems to be on the West Coast or the Midwest United States. So I think playing into like that New Vegas kind of vibe, having some sort of out of the vault type characters, and then you explore, you find a vault, could be an interesting storyline. They could do a lot there with the NCR and a lot of what's going on. We saw New Vegas, but again, I think let's keep this separate. Let's keep it in kind of its own region and be able to play off of and bounce off of all of that great lore and story from the rest of the game. So again, as you can tell, I could probably talk about this all day. So I'm trying to keep it pretty broad with how I feel about it. But I really, I'm a big fan of the Fallout franchise. So definitely interesting there. Definitely get excited about. We do know just from that teaser, like images I showed a few weeks back, that they had a Vault 33 jacket on some of those characters we saw. So we'll see what goes on there. Every vault kind of has its own story, and that's what makes them really unique and interesting in Fallout. So we'll see what this vault is like and what their scenario or experiment or whatever's going on with this one. It could be a whole new type of sci-fi that we may not be used to with Fallout, just because of how open that kind of vault experiment structure they kind of had going there is. I think it's really ripe for different storytelling ideas. So I digress there. I'm going to move on to one of our last stories here, but some more from this Bethesda interview. So I think it's worth keeping on here. I think we're going to keep on that same thing on the docket there. And I'm just going to move down to the next article. So here, as you see, we have, excuse me, I'm going to take a quick sip of water here. I've been talking for a bit. Just want to make sure I'm able to continue speaking there. But we have the new Indiana Jones game, which is also, again, probably a ways off here. I don't expect this in the next year or so. Maybe 2024. Maybe we see some more trailers, information in the next year or two. But I don't suspect an imminent release per se. Again, this is coming from Machine Games, creator of the Wolfenstein series. So based on their timelines, I do think it's not, out of the ballpark to see them, turn around another game in the next couple of years. I'm trying to think of their last release with, it might have been the Wolfenstein, the DLC kind of half expansion game. I may be mistaken there, but that being said, this is a completely new IP. I shouldn't say IP. It's Indiana Jones. It's not a new IP, but it's a new IP for them. Completely new game built from the ground up. So it's not like it's a sequel and they're bouncing around here to push out their next game. This is a fully built from the ground up project that had years in the making in terms of pre-development. So I think I wouldn't be holding my tongue here. This is going to be in the next year or two. I think maybe it's on the kind of the back burner. That being said, getting into it here, Todd Howard, is understandably still pretty vague on it. Still doesn't want to give too much information away because it is that far off. But the interviewer in this interviewer did touch on it, so I did want to mention this as well. He said, I quote here from Todd Howard, "I will just say it's a mashup. So it's unique. It isn't one thing intentionally. So it does a lot of different things that myself and the folks in Machine Games have wanted to do in a game. So it's a unique thing." And I'm reading over from the quote here, so I hope I'm getting into the mic as I read those quotes. But as I'm saying here, I do think that's an interesting quote just because of the history of both Todd Howard's games, both Machine Games' work, and also what we'd expect per se from an Indiana Jones game. I mean, when you think Indiana Jones and gaming, there's a few, some of the older Indiana Jones games that were really, really great, actually. I think a lot of people love the time for like movie tie-ins. Again, I may be misremembering here. I was very young when some of the movie tie-in Indiana Jones games were coming out. That being said, I do think here that people were expecting like a third-person action game. That's kind of what you would think. You think video games and Indiana Jones, you kind of think Uncharted or Tomb Raider, like that kind of style. This treasure hunt, these huge set pieces. Of course, we have Uncharted being its own movie franchise, which is kind of funny because it essentially was. And I'm not to put down Uncharted. I love Uncharted, and I'm not saying it's anywhere near like a ripoff of Indiana Jones. Don't get me wrong, it's not, but very similar, of course. An action adventure. You're like an archaeologist slash adventurer slash kind of combatant. You're fighting these forces to get some ancient relic. It's a very similar concept there, and I think that with all of the history of a lot of games like Uncharted, it seems like an Indiana Jones progressive narrative game would be like that. It would be third person, just from the way you would expect. That being said, with Machine Games, with their history of shooters, obviously with Wolfenstein being most recent, you might expect a first person game. Even with Todd Howard, I mean, of course, Bethesda games are always third or first person optional, but they really tend to be first person centric RPGs. They really are built in that way. So it is an interesting kind of recipe here for the who's making this game and their history and their background. And then adding that quote here where he says it's a very much a mashup of a lot of what we've done. It's something we've always wanted done, but I guess that implies they probably haven't yet, since it's something they've always wanted to do in a game. So that implies something that's something they've never done before. Does that imply that it has to be another, perspective? Of course not. It could be a very unique first person game, or maybe a hybrid. Who knows? The way they work this around. Maybe there's multiple characters. Maybe you play as Indiana Jones or another character in another perspective, and then you play as another one in a different perspective. I mean, again, I'm probably getting too expansive there, doesn't but I digress. I do think that it's just an interesting quote there, even though there's no real information on this game. As kind of in the trend with the stories today, if you haven't noticed, it's a lot of like, yep, this game's coming. These are some of the details, but no real concrete information on any story or any real the nitty gritty details here. So all we know is that from that teaser trailer, we can presume based on all these documents and stuff we got that some of the story is based in 1937 probably in the Vatican City, which is pretty interesting. It means somewhere in between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, somewhere in between those two movies. So, speaking of Indiana Jones, we got that Indiana Jones, was it 5, 6 trailer this week for the new Indiana Jones reboot movie with Harrison Ford. So that's pretty exciting for people who are fans of the franchise. So that's good to delineate here. This game is not, no offense to Harrison Ford, but older Harrison Ford kind of retired to Indiana Jones. This is, Indiana Jones like in his prime, in between like the main movies, So, take that, that's when this game's based. Again, we don't know much else about the information there. We've seen some teasers again in that same announcement trailer where all the folders and the files, that there were files alluding to Egypt, Peru, and even Mesopotamia. So again, it seems like what you'd expect from an indie game. You're gonna be going across the world, charting this mystery, finding new clues in all these different countries and mysteries and tombs. I'm sure it'll be similar to a Tomb Raider Uncharted experience. And I think it's kind of funny to say that. Obviously, Indiana Jones predates them. But I think in the video game sphere, it is kind of funny to note that with people going in on their expectations, because I think it is something to note that that Uncharted influence definitely is there. And it's kind of interesting to see Uncharted become this like big movie franchise. They actually just got a theme park ride, I think, opening in Spain in the next year or two that they're starting to build now for Uncharted. So it's kind of funny to see Uncharted blow up as this kind of new movie franchise from these video game roots, and now see indie make a comeback, and it's also coming back with in a huge way in video games as well, kind of vice versa. So kind of a interesting duality there. That being said, I think that's all of the information there on the Indiana Jones. But before I move on to that next headline, I did want to think if there's anything else in that Todd Howard interview I wanted to mention. We did get some details on Starfield again. Again, I feel like I've covered Starfield ad nauseum on this channel, so I didn't want to talk too much more on Starfield. But I think we got some details about where their heads at with that game. They talked about how they were very modding centric on that game. They were thinking about how the modders would, elongate the lifespan of the game. We think about a game like Skyrim, who has now been, living on for 10 years vicariously through these modders and through the fans who continue to love and support that game. And Todd Howard spoke on that interview how he didn't want this to be a situation with Starfield and Fallout and Skyrim, especially Skyrim, having these giant long gaps of 10, 15 years potentially between releases. It was never the plan, of course. That being said, I think it was a bit of positivity around Starfield. He talked about how going forward, they want to make Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 and potentially Fallout 5 in the 2030s or whenever that starts being built, games that can last like 10, 20 years, with that in mind, with modding support and with like longevity and the basis for that building blocks in mind because of, their long development cycle. So as, take that, for better or for worse with having to rely on modding. I think overall it's a good thing though. And I don't think it's necessarily relying on modding, especially when they, deliver such a, huge amount of content in the base game and it can only be expanded on. I think that's something that, is really a really interesting approach. I think that community-based approach, obviously something that, isn't as feasible, I think, with multiplayer games in terms of having that kind of, customization ability and all that modability there. That being said, I think it was an interesting note there, something more to look forward to. And I mentioned that because we have one more story before we get into our Game Awards predictions. And I think once I get there, I'm going to start talking about maybe our predictions for Starfield here, maybe my predictions for Sony, some other Xbox stuff here on the Bethesda Xbox side. We'll get into that later on. But we have one more story actually on the Sony side of things here. So I'm going to move over to that. And I will just transfer this over real quick. A little more streamlined. All right. So pulling this up here. As you could see, I'll get that headline, excuse me, a little more into view. They say Sony steps into the metaverse here with the Mocopi motion tracking system, and I'm hoping I'm saying that right. I think it's a play on the word mocap or motion capture. So they're Mocopi. I don't know how they're trying to pronounce that, but it is a play on that word there. And the reason it is playing that word for obvious reasons here, it is some sort of portable wireless motion tracking system, and there are a few uses here, and so I do want to talk about this briefly, but it does have some really cool and really exciting implications, both for indie developers, people who are just getting started in game development, and even people who are doing things like visual effects, things like film, TV, other things like that, even just digital design and animation. This is a really huge step for that, and I think could really, really, really help animators in a way that was really just not accessible to those who weren't able to buy or be able to get access to really expensive motion tracking equipment. So again, I don't think this is a parity for motion tracking equipment as it stands today, but we'll get into the details here just a little bit. This Mocopi consists of 6 motion tracking armbands. So you wear 2 on your hands, 2 on your feet, 1 on your back, and then 1 around your head, like a headband. It's a price around 49,500 yen, or about $400, about 360 there, give or take. And the aim is, of course, as I said, to allow you to track your body, to either create videos, create motion tracking, captures that you could then, work on later on, or you could even track them in real time, which is interesting here because then you could use that in metaverse-like apps, is what they're saying there in the headline, like VR chat, or like, Meta's new metaverse, environment where they want people moving around, or even things like PlayStation VR. We have, the Valve, platform. I'm not sure what the applications could happen here, but if you get some sort of what's the word here, coordination with some of the other VR platforms, or even Sony's own VR, maybe they add this to the PlayStation VR 2 set up down the line. But this enables us to, bring VR to another level very quickly, where you don't need a large machine, you don't need cameras in like 4 corners of your room to track your whole body movement. You could have these body sensors that could allow you to have a full range of motion in a virtual environment, which can be really interesting for multiple reasons. Obviously, we talk a lot about the future of the internet and the metaverse and VR in general, and what it would be like to live, in like a Ready Player One type virtual environment. That's something that's totally not impossible. It's already doable right now. It's just about how much we invest in that, how much we want for an entire society or entire communities of people to try to, live in a virtual world as part of our daily working or just casual lives. It's a very sci-fi, semi-dystopic even type conversation. So I don't want to get too deep into that because I love, just, talking about, tech and the future implications of that. I think it's an interesting discussion. But I do think, for media production, for animation, for, again, the real-time motion capture and things like you want to create animated, content, or even, just interact in the, the VR world. This is really, really cool technology here. Of course, I don't think everyone is going to jump for a $400 device immediately. That's just an accessory for VR. This is something that, again, like I said, probably developers, probably people who are, interested in starting, maybe an independent project, or even, an educational project. I think it's gonna be a really great educational device, for, some mocap stuff and some other, just learning opportunities for game dev. So again, apologies, I'm getting a lot of notifications. I might have to mute my notifications here. Apologies there. That being said, I lost my train of thought from those. That being said, I think that's about what I wanted to cover on the Mocopi anyway. There was a quote here from Sony I did want to mention, that normally video production using motion capture requires dedicated equipment and production using motion capture operators. Excuse me, I got lost my whole track there with these notifications here. I got to see if I can silence those. My apologies. That being said, I do think that, being able to take off all those constraints, again, I'm not sure this is exactly the same quality of a full professional motion capture studio, but being able to take off those constraints and still get fairly, satisfying and productive results without all that equipment and that infrastructure and that support just for $400 is huge. And for someone who's investing, in a project and doesn't have that, all that level of resourcing, that's, a $400 investment that you can get, some funding for and be able to make a huge difference in your game and take it to the next level of a VR game or an animation or a motion capture based, type cutscene level, whatever you're trying to do. I think it's just a super, super cool, accessible device that I think is going to, just get better and better the more we see more iterations of this kind of stuff. So on December 15th, which is, again, I think next 2 weeks from now, exactly, that's a Thursday, December 15th. Sony's going to be providing the first SDKs, the software development kits that are going to be coming out, and that will link to motion capture data with metaverse services, along with real-time development platform Unity, which is very notable, and Autodesk animation mocap app Motion Builder, which is very interesting. So nothing for that Adobe motion capture app I thought was interesting. They're sticking with Autodesk here in Unity, but the Unity is definitely a key feature there. Having direct integration with Unity is huge for everything I just said. I don't need to restate all the implications there of how cool that would be for developers. That being said, I think I could probably saying most of the same stuff here. Other than I do want to mention, it does require a smartphone just to work around an app here. So you do need some sort of smartphone or some sort of smart device. You could probably get this on an iPad or even a computer, probably if need be. That being said, you do need some sort of device, so it's not fully portable in that sense. That being said, I think it's a really, really cool, just the implication of the technology going forward here for VR, for motion capture in general. It's really amazing that they were able to do something like this and get this technology in such small, pieces of hardware there. Of course, having, 6 different high-powered, high-tech tracking devices isn't the most ideal or most, least expensive, solution to this problem yet, but we haven't had, many sophisticated full body tracking in real time type devices at all. So it's very hard to have a crazy amount of expectations there. And I think the more this technology progresses, the more it develops. Of course, it'll get, smaller, more efficient and cheaper as time goes on. That's how tech seems to always go. That being said, I think the future of VR, the future of all of this, metaverse type interaction is really interesting. It's something, if you're a tech person or a gamer or not, it's something you definitely want to keep an eye on, because I think it will be just a cultural phenomenon either way. I think people have said that this could be one of those things that's just a fad. A lot of things, have been said on that and have proven wrong, and a lot of have proven true. I mean, VR kind of had that treatment a few years back, and then people said, oh, it was kind of right. It kind of came and went. And I don't think it was because it was a fad per se. It was more so that it was just a little bit before his time. And it becomes a fad in the moment. But I think the longevity wise and in the future of gaming as a whole, I don't see VR going anywhere. In fact, I see it getting smaller, more portable, more accessible until you have a pair of glasses like I'm wearing now, or something even maybe less intrusive, like you've seen like a Black Mirror episode, like one of those brain chips or one of those little tiny USB ports you plug in. And I could talk all day about like sci-fi and the implications of that. I think it's obviously a very interesting topic, but I think we want to move on here to our last part of the show, which is our Game Awards predictions. Very excited on that for the Sony Mocopi, but we'll have to see later in the future exactly how that device is implemented, how people use it, what it's used in conjunction with. I think that Unity integration is going to be interesting to see what people can develop with that technology and be able to have different Unity interactions. You can maybe move around and play in a full VR Unity game when you're not even really the most experienced developer. It could be a beginner's type of task now, because you have those tools so accessible and so easily integrated into the Unity platform. So again, obviously I just think it's super cool. I'm gonna move on here to my predictions for the Game Awards. We don't have any more articles for that actually, so probably just gonna switch over here and see if we can get maybe a generic Game Awards article up in the background, just so I can give us some background here. But I'm going to start my thoughts as I bring that up. Obviously, I said before, I'm really anticipating a lot here. I don't have a laundry list of predictions, but I do have a few notable like confirmations. I do have a few personal predictions, things that I want to see. But if there's anything personally that you're looking forward to gaming wise, any games that you haven't really seen on the docket in recent memory, or have heard about in recent memory, or wondering when's the next trailer, or when's the next nugget of information, please let me know in the chat. I'd love to discuss them with you guys. That being said, we did get a few things here. So I'm pulling up, this is straight from GameSpot.com here. This is just a bit of the docket for how to watch the Game Awards next week. So in case you weren't aware, it is going to be next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I should say that's my time, Eastern time. I think we have the full docket here. So 5 p.m. Pacific, of course. We have 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, of course, 2 a.m. GMT, and then 12 a.m. AET. And that's on December 9th, of course, it's 12 a.m. So keep that in mind. It will, depending on what time zone you're watching in, but I would recommend, if you do have time to watch, if you can, to check it out, especially if you're a fan of gaming in general. It's not just for announcements or things like that, but to also learn about games that came out, to get, see all people that work super, super hard on their craft be awarded for it. It's a really cool, great night for games. I'm not the biggest like award show person per se, but I really do think it's so vital to have this award show like any other award show in any industry. It may not be the most favorite thing of artists and creators, but I think it is super crucial for for some sort of way to people get awarded and recognized for all the amazing and really impactful hard work that inspire others and really do make change. I think so. I think it really is an incredible, an important event to have, and it's cool to see how much bigger and grander it gets every year to the level of something like an Emmys or an Oscars. I think gaming deserves that and even more. So I love the Game Awards. What it's and what it's all about, and bringing everyone who loves gaming together and just celebrating the art and the craft, regardless of what you're excited about or what you want to see happen, or what if your game's going to win Game of the Year, or the other game that you weren't as thrilled with. I know people can get competitive about those kinds of things, whether it's sports or film or art, whatever it is. Of course, people love to see their favorites in the spotlight. But I think of course if there's some friendly competition with like Game of the Year, so that's always nice and fun. But I do think that it's just more about celebration and less about all of that competitiveness there, and just highlighting all of the best that gaming has to offer. That being said, I'll get off my soapbox there, and I will talk about what I'm personally excited about. I do think Game of the Year this year will be pretty interesting. I know Elden Ring is a huge, people have been clamoring for Elden Ring for years on the Game Awards. Jeff Keighley, the host here, has been able, to reveal a lot of Elden Ring news. So that's obviously a huge contender for Game of the Year, and people are predicting maybe some sort of DLC. Because if there were ever a time to announce DLC for Elden Ring, it would be either at Summer Game Fest or at the Game Awards, because of Jeff Keighley's support for like all of that game's marketing. He's kind of been like the sole announcer of a lot of what they marketed throughout their release, given the amount of hype he got for his events surrounding the Elden Ring. That being said, we also had Sonic Frontiers recently. We had God of War Ragnarok recently, which is a very serious contender as well. People are talking about. That being said, the big kind of excitement here that I want to talk about at the end of the show, because you could always look up all the contenders for all the awards and you could decide what you think is going to win. But I think what's more interesting here is what we think is going to be announced, because not only at the Game Awards, we get all these awards and we get performances and developer discussions. We also get a ton of new game trailers and a ton of new announcements. One thing we have confirmed so far is that we have a few of the previously announced titles that are going to be on, confirmed for live presentation. So as you can see on screen, if it's sitting here for a few minutes, you have that Final Fantasy XVI live presentation confirmed. You have a God of War Ragnarok live musical performance of Blood Upon the Snow by Hozier, which is very interesting. I'm not sure if I've heard that song. I'm very early at God of War Ragnarok, as I said previously, but that seems pretty cool. They're going to give it like an homage to the game. Does that hint at maybe a winning Game of the Year, given it has a full live performance dedicated to it? Who knows? I don't want to assume anything there, but we'll see. Of course, we have a new mystery project by 505 Games, including Michael Madsen, which is very interesting. If you don't know 505, Control Ultimate is their most recent. I'm not sure what comes next from them with the Alec Wake franchise with Control. I don't know what we see exactly next there, but I think a new mystery project is exciting, and I think we're going to see a lot more cool stuff from them. So that's pretty cool. We have a new Among Us news during the pre-show. Interesting. Josef Fares, who was the developer of It Takes Two, of A Way Out, famous for his co-op games and his famous Game Awards performances and speeches, will be back as a presenter. So they wanted to announce that he's kind of a Game Awards celebrity at this point, but he won Game of the Year last year, so very notable and very well deserved there to have him back as a presenter. And of course, we have a picture of a Tekken 8 themed package that is going to be coming. Along with, we did get some extra announcements here in the past few days that I don't think this article saw that I did see, which was we got confirmations about Steam Decks being given out. This is really interesting. So Valve is actually promising to give a Steam Deck like every other, I think it's like every 5 minutes or so during the podcast. So they're going to be giving around almost 100 Steam Deck 512 gigabyte versions. So pretty cool move there from Valve, especially as the Steam Deck production really ramps up here to really get the word out there about Steam Deck and get that in people's hands as well. Of course, I'm sure that's good promotion for them. It's great for people that are winning Steam Decks next Thursday. So that's a pretty cool side note there. But in terms of other confirmations, I believe Diablo IV, we've seen it quite a bit of, was confirmed. We had the Dead Space remake confirmed to be showcased, which is interesting, especially given all of the, kind of on the back end of the Callisto protocol release and that whole, comparison there, it being the spiritual successor, almost spiritual, like prequel, if you will, to Dead Space in the way it was planned out. That being said, we also have not really a confirmation here, but a very, very soft confirmation, kind of like almost half a leak here with Jedi Fallen Survivor at the Star Wars side of things. Is we've been waiting for that for a while. We got reports, I want to say a month or two ago, that was coming to the Game Awards. I think there was another leak on that earlier this week. Again, I'm not too fond of getting into the leaks and rumors because I do like the surprise of seeing the trailers as well. Like I'm sure you all love the surprise of seeing it for the first time. But that being said, sometimes these leaks just get out a little too early and it's kind of unavoidable. That happened with some of the previous Marvel games, that Amy Hennig game. We got all the details that it was going to be Captain America and Black Panther before it was even announced. So when it was announced and there was no title and it was more so just more details, it kind of was a little bit of a bummer. And not on there, and it's not the fault of the developer. It was unfortunate that got leaked because it kind of fizzled out the excitement of that reveal, since we didn't know anything new, or we didn't get a title, any gameplay. It was just, oh yeah, it's that Captain America and Black Panther game. So it was kind of, leaks can sometimes kind of, I don't want to say ruin the excitement, but they could certainly hinder the excitement. And I try to stick away from that too much. But we don't know much at all about Jedi Fallen Survivor other than it exists. We know it's there. So I don't see it as too, dangerous to say we may see it again. I think that's just a good thing. It wasn't like it was a completely unannounced project. That being said, I think we will get some completely unheard of, unannounced projects at the Game Awards. Again, obviously, I can't predict something that I literally would never have heard about before, like a completely new IP. So I can't say anything on that. But in terms of maybe older IPs or reboots or sequels that have not been announced at all, I think maybe something on the PlayStation side of things, maybe Ghost of Tsushima. I think we know that's probably real. We've seen leaks of hirings and of things going on at Sucker Punch Studios, but no real news on exactly what their next game is exactly. We've heard just rumors, and I think an official confirmation of Ghost of Tsushima 2, maybe it's Ghost of something else. I think that's probably the best way to go with that in terms of titling it. If I were them, I'd probably make a Ghost of whatever, whatever other, Japanese location I'm going to set it in, because I think that just sounds cool instead of Ghost Tsushima, 2. I do think he may go to mainland Japan. I'm not sure how they want to go about, the Ghost's legacy. I won't speak too much on the implications of the first game story, but it implied that it could get larger than Tsushima and bring in more. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions here. We did have the Eco Island DLC, which did take us to another island already off of Tsushima. So that was the kind of the ghost of Eco, they almost called it in some ways. So we'll see what happens there. I think when that game was, first leaked, people thought it was Ghost of Tsushima 2, and they thought it was going to be called Ghost of Eco. Later on, we realized it was just an expansion, and it was Eco Island DLC for the first game. So totally, not an unprecedented prediction there. I wouldn't be like a Nostradamus here for saying that. I think it's somewhat likely to hear from. You guys know me if you watch the show. I do want to see more on Spider-Man for PlayStation as well. It's been a full year with no PlayStation Showcase. It's the first time in the last 2-3 years they've done that. Ever since COVID ran around and E3 kind of shut down from its usual way of doing things, and Sony wasn't going anymore. Sony's been really, I don't want to use the word weird, but kind of unusual on how they've been doing their showcases these past few years. Of course, we have our Sony State of Plays. They're kind of 20 to 30 minute smaller showcases that aren't always the big heavy hitters. But then you get, the direct State of Plays that are just for like a big release. And you also get the Sony PlayStation Showcase, which is the once a year, like 1 hour plus type conference, and that didn't come this September. If you were following the show, that's this September. I was like, here we go. Any week now, guys. Where's that PlayStation Showcase? I'm waiting for it. Unfortunately, it did not show up. It's now December. I kind of forgot about it. I was like, maybe the end of the year, still have hope before fall. Now we're at the Game Awards. We didn't hear much about anything they said. They teased it at the Summer Game Fest too, and gave no information about a few things they were working on. So I'm thinking this is a time for Sony to really show up and really, announce some of their heavy hitters that are kind of more ready to go. Obviously, Wolverine is not, I don't think it's on the docket. I think people kept saying that would be maybe 2023 as well with Spider-Man, but I never thought that. There was a reason Spider-Man said 2023 when they released that trailer 2 years ago, and Wolverine had no release year. It was it's still, 2 years, 3 years well ahead of it. I'm not sure where we see that game, but maybe we see more gameplay. I'm not sure, but no doubt in my mind that we're not seeing that unless we see Spider-Man as well. They may do a back-to-back approach like they did with their last showcase. Then again, I think The Last of Us Factions needs to be shown sometime soon, in the next 6 months or so, or else I'm not sure where that game is. I think this is a great time for it. Jeff Keighley obviously had some involvement there. They had it shown at the Summer Game Fest. That being said, there was no gameplay. there was no details and a single concept art for that game, because it was more so on the back burner of the Last of Us Part 1 remake, which was being announced at that Summer Games Fest. That being said, there was a major leak there. People heard all about it. Not only heard all about it, saw gameplay and got all into the details of that Last of Us 1 remake before it was even talked about at Summer Game Fest. So that really was unfortunate. I think the trailer itself that was supposed to be shown at the conference leaked in full in HD. So not much you can really do about that, when the cat was out of the bag. That being said, they did discuss it on stage and talk about factions. And I wonder, the reason I bring that up is because I wonder, does that play a factor into the Game Awards here? Is there any mistrust between Naughty Dog and the Game Awards? Again, I don't know who was responsible for that leak. Again, some things are just kind of hard to avoid. It could have been a date. People are data mining now these days. It's not like people are just, flubbing up and accidentally tweeting something or accidentally sharing something with someone. These are things that, come from, data mining, breaches, hacks, looking at databases that, it's sometimes they're very hard to prevent. And when you're trying to keep something secret. So a lot of times it's really no one's fault per se. It's just really unfortunate circumstances. And again, I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt there. It seems to be the case, but maybe because of that leak, maybe Naughty Dog is a little more hesitant to announce more things at these large conferences that aren't their own or Sony based, where they can keep things a little more internal and not have to share details between multiple large corporations with multiple employees who could potentially leak things like that. So again, I hopefully that's secure there. I don't a bit of a tangent there in terms of the security of the Game Awards, but these things often do get leaked, especially next week. Hopefully next Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, even that afternoon is when a lot of that comes out. Hopefully we don't get too spoiled and we can all just enjoy the show for what it is. That being said, that's about it for like those types of predictions. I think I've gone over everything we have here that's confirmed. Let's look over my list again. I do want to talk about a little more on Xbox as well. So I covered kind of my PlayStation predictions or what I'm looking for them. I think Xbox, obviously Starfield, I talked about plenty on the show as well. I said that earlier this episode. Definitely excited for that game. Got to figure out how I'm going to play that game when the time comes, but I would love to see more on that from Bethesda in any capacity. I think more from Obsidian. I want to see what's going on with Avowed. I want to see what's going on with potentially the Outer Worlds sequel. I know that's pretty early on development, but Avowed has really been on the back burner for a while, and that's something that people are really, really excited about from them. So I think that's one of the other like kind of forgotten about heavy hitters that Xbox kind of needs, and I really want to see that do well because I think that's such a the recipe there, an Obsidian game. It's it has kind of like the Elder Scrolls type lore. People were calling it like the Fallout New Vegas of Skyrim. It could be, and again, this is a game that hasn't even come out yet, so take that with a huge grain of salt. But people were saying that because it was Obsidian, of course, the developers there. You have the fantasy universe here. This is actually the Pillars of Eternity universe, if I'm not mistaken, that Avowed takes place in. So you kind of link it up to that really awesome RPG series there and get some really cool narrative implications there. Again, I'm not too familiar with that universe myself, but again, it had like a really great recipe going there for Avowed. So I want to see more of that game as well. There are a few smaller things I think we're kind of on the back burner that, I went through my list here at about 6-7 games that I want to talk about, but I feel like I'm forgetting something. There's something else that's kind of on the tip of my tongue here. But if I can't think of it, I will just say that I am excited and I do want to go with an open mind and really not think too deep into that kind of stuff because I'm just excited to see what comes out of it. I think something else from Star Wars would be cool. Again, I said Jedi Fallen Order earlier when we started this, but I'm thinking, that franchise has now been licensed out. We saw, Ubisoft has a a hint in there. PlayStation was getting the Sony had some sort of exclusivity with the Star Wars license as well in terms of that KOTOR remake that again got bought out by Embracer, was now in shambles, isn't being made anymore. I'm not sure. We're not sure. Probably being restructured, then be remade on a much later time scale. Again, we don't really know what's going on with that KOTOR remake. Kind of just put it out of my head for now because I don't think it's really imminent. That being said, I think something new in Star Wars would be cool. Something new in Marvel would be cool. Those are two giant, these two giant Disney franchises that are now, not shackled to any exclusivity deals. Any games company can make a really, high quality triple A, IP game with Star Wars. So I don't know what could come out of it, but I think the possibilities are endless with Star Wars, and Marvel, especially given just the entire, Rolodex of characters that you could pull from there. Obviously, I'm super excited about what Insomniac's doing. With their part of the Marvel universe. Obviously, I love what's happening with the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers narrative approach. Obviously, Avengers didn't have the best launch, but I think they learned a lot from that as well. What happened there, and I think that's that story approach. There was a lot of things they did really, really well in that game as well. And I think a lot of what we saw from Guardians of the Galaxy as well with the story mode focus, really hitting those characters home. I think that's what people love about heroes is not just the gravity defying feats and all the action. Of course, people love to see their heroes saving the day, but it's about what they stand for and about doing it for the right reasons and the goodness in those heroes and the richness of those storytelling there and how could you know create a relatable character that has to like face these challenges and overcome them. So again, I'm just talking about storytelling techniques here. I could go all day on why these things get me excited, but I think I'm getting to my point here. We're about wrapping up the show here. We did go for the hour today, despite not a ton of news, but again, a lot to look forward to next week. I'm sure, obviously, I think next week is just the Game Awards show. I'm sure we'll have some more news updates that I will cover briefly at the beginning, but I think my focus for next week's report is going to be going through all of those announcements, the Game Awards, who won what's coming up in 2023. And 2023 really does seem to be, stacked up with a lot of game releases, barring any potential delays again, because that was how we felt about this year. A lot got delayed to 2023. So I think a lot will eventually come out because I think a lot of those games have been kind of, in the oven for a while here. So it's a good time, I think, to be excited about being, playing these games because I think we're gonna have a really great, year ahead of us when it comes to 2023 gaming. So that about does it for me today, guys. I'm gonna hop off. The topic here is not much else to say in terms of the Game Awards, but as always, I really do want to thank everyone who joins me here every week. I really appreciate your viewership. It means the world to me, especially my one or two regular viewers. You guys are always here. I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. They're always commenting. But I really do recommend, if it's your first time watching, definitely, make sure to tune in again. We're going to be covering news like this every week. This was a bit of a light week, I will say, but next week for sure, I think you definitely want to stay tuned for the Game Awards announcements. It's going to be really cool. And that being said, we also are planning on having a lot more guest appearances. I know a lot of it recently has just been me, myself here reporting the news, but I think the long term, as we had in the past in the Analyst Report, I would love to have, some more guests on here to talk to, and we may get some, really cool, awesome people to talk to here, some industry professionals even. So I would really recommend stay tuned, guys. Stick with us here on the Endless channel and all our platforms. We're super excited to have you, and we're super excited to see all of the awesome stuff you're going to do here at Endless Studios with your own games this coming fall. We have a lot of exciting stuff with the coming program. So again, that's about it here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to tune in next week for that episode. And if not, if I don't talk to you before then, which I won't because this is the end of the show, have a great weekend. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Endless Report. Thank you so much again and take care. All right. Bye-bye.